So Pokemon Champions is here and we're all excited to get battling. Today, I'm going to tell you some things you want to think about before moving your Pokemon into Pokemon Champions, as well as how to move Pokemon into Pokemon Champions via Pokemon Home. If you're coming from Pokemon Legends ZA or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, doing a few things before moving Pokemon into Champions could save you thousands of victory points and allow you to get a leg up on others in Champions. Even if you weren't previously a competitive player, you'll probably have some of the resources in ZA or SV to at least start this process. When moving Pokemon from Pokemon Home to Pokemon Champions, the EVs, moves, and natures from previous games are moved with it. This has the potential to save you thousands of victory points, or VP as they're called, because you can limit the amount of retraining you have to do in Champions. But this is only for the first time they are moved into Champions. Moving them out of Pokemon Champions will save whatever nature's moves and EVs they have in Champions, so you have to do this before ever sending them to Champions. So it does take a little bit of pre-planning to do. You can do this with Showdown, for example, or CRB to look at what moves are available and what EVs you want with Showdown. For example, this Absol here, I moved it in, I caught it right fresh out of ZA, and so this Absol had nothing on it, and I tested this by going into Pokemon Home, where I changed its nature and then I maxed out its attack and then moved it back into Champions, and as you can see, it still has that original setting from when it first moved into Champions. It's really up to you if you think this is worth the time and the saving of victory points, because Pokemon Champions does make these changes a lot quicker than doing them in other games, unless you already have the vitamins, nature mints, ability capsules, and moves in other games. Even then, it might be faster. But if you're starting Champions without spending any money, without the starter pack, and lack training tickets, this might be worth your time. Let's take a look with Absol here. If I want to max out its attack and speed and give it those 2 extra points to 1 in HP and 1 in defense, that is 333 victory points, costing you 5 victory points per stat change. If we want to change the nature to adamant, that's going to be an additional 500, and then changing the ability is another 500, totaling 1,000. If I want to change each move here, let's just change all the moves just for the sake of changing them. That's going to cost you another 1,000 victory points, costing this a total of 2,330 victory points per Pokemon. While the game and the tutorial levels do give you about 2,000 or 20,000 victory points, this could save you a few. This adds up to 2,330 victory points per Pokemon. While the game and the tutorial levels do give you 20,000 victory points to start out with, this could save you a few thousand here and there, even if you're just doing some of these things, like the EVs, or the moves, or the natures, or the abilities. Doing this in another game could save you a bunch. Even if you're just doing one of these steps, you're at least saving anywhere between 300 to 1,000 or 500 victory points, which will add up over time. If you want to go this route, I have some older videos on EV training in both Pokemon Legends ZA and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The links for these will be in the description down below. These videos are all pre-DLC, so there might be some things like resetting EVs in Scarlet and Violet that are now faster with the DLC, but both these videos will help you build Pokemon with just the base games. But now that we've went over saving you some victory points, let's move Pokemon into Pokemon Champions. This starts in Pokemon Home. You want to make sure that any Pokemon you want to move into Champions is already moved out of the game they were in and are already sitting in Pokemon Home. I suggest you create a box or two for Pokemon to hang out while they're in Champions. This makes things like tracking these Pokemon and finding these Pokemon to move back and forth a whole lot easier. As you can see, I've already moved a few into Home. I have quite the collection here. And as you can see, these grayed out Pokemon with the Pokemon Champions symbol right next to them are already in Champions as we speak. So this will show you automatically what Pokemon are in Pokemon Champions and which ones you can move. But let's go to the next step. Next, on Pokemon Home's main screen in the bottom right corner, you're going to see the Champions icon right here behind me. This is where you will move Pokemon into Pokemon Champions. Once you click on this icon, it will give you some information. Check with your Nintendo account and your Pokemon Champions account that you have linked onto that Switch, and it will confirm. So if you have multiple Champions accounts or profiles like linked to this Pokemon Home, which I don't think you can do, but you want to make sure that this matches with the Pokemon Champions information that you have. Once you click on this icon, it will give you some information about the Pokemon that you are moving, and then it will help you go over your boxes. This is where moving them all to one box helps out because they're all in one place. As we can see here, we can see that some Pokemon aren't available yet into Pokemon Champions. These Pokemon cannot be moved. So this is where it helps out for them being all in one box. So I'm going to send over Charizard, Venusaur, Talonflame, and Dragapult. Maybe, not yet, not Politoed yet. So at the bottom, you're going to see send for a visit, which is hitting Y, and you're going to do that. And it's going to warn you while Pokemon is visiting Pokemon Champions, you will be unable to do the following actions: send them to a different game, release them from your box, or apply markings. So this is just standard stuff. It's basically just locking them into Pokemon Home, and they can't be moved or changed while they're in Champions. So we're going to send these Pokemon over. As you can see, I currently have 30 Pokemon in Pokemon Champions. You can only move 30 Pokemon at a time into Pokemon Champions, but as you can see, this can be done multiple times if you want to move more. Once you've confirmed that you have moved these Pokemon into Champions, that's when we move over to Pokemon Champions itself. Once you're in Pokemon Champions, you're going to go to the recruit screen here. This is where you pick Pokemon from the ranch to recruit Pokemon. And as you can see, there is a tab that says collect Pokemon from Pokemon Home. This is where you're going to pick them up. It's going to check. And so you can either send back to Pokemon Home if you make a mistake, or if you forget something, you can send them back immediately, or you can just collect them here. It says when you collect a Pokemon that is visiting from this game from Pokemon Home for the first time, the Pokemon's current strength will be used to determine the strength in Pokemon Champions. So this is the EVs, the moves, items, all this stuff. The first initial box, the first initial time you bring them in, that is what's being saved. From then on, even if you make changes to that Pokemon in other games, some changes will not carry over to Pokemon Champions. So this is basically saying like, hey, once you save it here, that's what's going to be saved. Now, if you want to send Pokemon back, if you need room to bring more Pokemon in, there is a separate tab right behind me that says send Pokemon back to Pokemon Home. It is worth noting that these Pokemon technically don't count towards your Pokemon Champions collection, and you will need to keep 6 Pokemon from Champions in your box. So if I sit here and try to return 3 of these guys here, it will say you can't return Pokemon to the ranch. It will not leave you enough to battle with. So if you're working with no purchases in Pokemon Champion, you'll be only able to move 24 Pokemon because 6 slots will be saved for basically your tutorial Pokemon and any Pokemon like the Machamp or the Dragonite that you get as gifts from Pokemon Champions. And as you can see here, Terra Blast is not an available move on Dragapult, so I have costed myself 250 victory points where I have to change out that move before I use Dragapult, which I could have done outside of this game beforehand to save me some victory points. But if you did all these steps, these Pokemon are ready to be added to a battle team. You may need to add a stat point here and there. So yeah, this Dragapult, for example, I do need to change the Terra Blast. I do need to add a stat point, but instead of starting with a blank Dragapult here, I have all these EVs done. I have most of the moves, I have the ability, I have the nature. So instead of it costing me 2,330 victory points, making this Pokemon ready for Pokemon Champions will only cost me 255, which is a big difference and can save you a lot on starting out. So hopefully this helped you. And if it did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Pokemon Champions content, including replica teams, battle videos, and some metagame insights. Either way, I'm Zach, and I'll see you later.